Hello and welcome to my first video. This is the Magic the Gathering lore series where we go through every set talking about the lore found in each one. We're starting with Alpha, Beta, and Unlimited all the way back in 1993. Unfortunately, Alpha, Beta, and Unlimited do not have very much established lore in them. It was a jumping off point for Richard Garfield where the card game came first and foremost, and the lore was just kind of a setting in the background that was fun to do, this fantasy setting that he wanted to have. We have a few categories here. The first one is what little lore we do have, most of which is just setting up what would become Dominaria in the future. The first example of this is found on Banalish Hero, whose flavor text states Benalia has a complex caste system that changes with the lunar year. No matter what the season, the only caste that cannot be obtained by either hereditary or money is that of the hero. The next card that we have here is the Grizzly Bears, where we get a direct reference to the name of Dominaria, or Dominia. I think there was a typo, but dominant in here it says don't try to outrun one of Dominia's grizzlies. It'll catch you, knock you down, and eat you. Of course, you could run up a tree. In that case, you'll get a nice view before it knocks you out of the tree and eats you. So this is the first reference that we get to Dominaria, or in this case, Dominia. And we have here just grizzly bears, the OG grizzly bears, which is just a 2/2 with no ability. The next reference we get to setting up Dominaria is with the Herloon Minotaur. And it has the flavor text that states, the Minotaurs of the Herloon Mountains are known for their love of battle. They are also known for their hymns to the dead, sung for friend and foe alike. These hymns can last for days, filling the mountain valleys with their low, haunting sounds. Herloon Minotaur is setting up something that we see further explored in the dark and later on in the original Jumpstart with the legendary creature Sethron Herloon General. Mon's Goblin Raiders is another example of setting up the basis for something that we find later on in Dominaria. They have a flavor text that states, the intricate dynamics of run-developed goblin affairs are often confused with anarchy. The chaos, however, is the chaos of a thundercloud, and direction will sporadically and violently appear. Palshik Mons and his raiders are the thunderhead that leads in the storm. Not only does this set up the run-developed goblins, which we have references to all the way up into Dominaria United, but it also sets up a legendary creature in Pashalik Mons, and the very idea of goblins themselves being this chaotic force that just attacks wildly and thinks the most fun thing to do is blow up. Next, we have references to real-world myths, most of which come from the merfolk, hence with the merfolk of the Pearl Trident, who has a reference to Atlantis, which is, as most people know, a real-world myth. Atlantis doesn't exist. There's no historical background for it. But the merfolk of the Pearl Trident's flavor text state, most human scholars believe that merfolk are the survivors of sunken Atlantis. Humans adapted to the water, while merfolk, however, believe that humans sprang from merfolk who adapted themselves in order to explore their last frontier. Another example of this allusion to Atlantis is the Lord of Atlantis, who is, well, the Lord of Atlantis. It's just a cool merfolk card that alludes to Atlantis again. And I don't believe we ever get another allusion to Atlantis. This particular set of merfolk later on in the dark become the Voldalian merfolk. Moving on, we just have straight up quotes on these older cards, one of which is from Lewis Carroll, whenever he's talking about unicorns found on the card Pearled Unicorn. And the quote is, "Do you know, I always thought unicorns were fabulous monsters too. I never saw one alive before." "Well, now that you have seen each other," said the unicorn, "if you will believe in me, I'll believe in you." And again, this is said by Lewis Carroll, the author of Through the Looking Glass or Alice in Wonderland. Next quote we have is from The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, and it is found on Scathed Zombies. "They groaned, they stirred, they all uprose, nor spake nor moved their eyes. It had been strange, even in a dream, to have seen those dead men rise." Which is just a cool quote for, well, zombies. The last one isn't a direct quote, but it's a nice reference to a kind of folk story that we have from the Battle of 300 in Thermopylae Pass, and is found on Elvish Archers from Alpha, Beta, and Unlimited. And it's just this nice little quote. "I tell you, there are so many arrows flying about you couldn't hardly see the sun. So I says to young Angus, well, at least now we're fighting in the shade." And that's a response to an apocryphal event that we don't know for sure happened when the scouts for the Greek forces, whenever there was battle at Thermopylae, they came back and said that they had so many archers that their arrows would blot out the sun. And there came a reply from one of the Spartan fighters there, "Well, at least now we'll be fighting in the shade." Well, thank you for watching, and I apologize if this bored you. This will be a recurring theme. Next, we'll be going over Arabian Nights and what little lore we can find in there. I will be trying to work on my video editing skills. They're garbage at the moment. I'm using Google Slides, but hopefully everything turns out a little bit better. All right. Thank you guys. Have a good one.